Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience.
Oh, Selena, look how handsome John is, Betty told her friend. She was 6 months pregnant herself. Spit, her friend looked at her. Laughed Betty. That's good. The girl lifted her son in her arms and kissed him. You're so superstitious. Betty always knew that. God protects him, Selena said. They had been friends since high school, and now that they had both graduated and married, one was already a mother and the other was just getting ready. Where are they? Betty looked at her watch. I don't know, they should be here by now, she shrugged. Today was their special day. It was on this date that Betty and Selena had met their husbands. Yes, Harry and Carlos were friends. They'd been walking the streets of the city like girls, and apparently, as fate would have it, they'd met two friends. Since then, exactly 5 years had passed. They played weddings 1 month apart. At first, they wanted it to be on the same day, but then the girls changed their minds. And today they gathered to celebrate a small anniversary of their acquaintance, waiting only for their husbands. Are they knocking? Betty looked at her friend when she heard a sound. I don't know, go look. Carlos has keys. She looked toward the front door. Betty got up and went to open it. Indeed, there were young men standing on the landing with so many bags in their hands that they couldn't even knock properly. Wow, Harry, she can feel you even through the doors. Carlos looked at his friend. Come on, we were just scraping by. They entered the apartment. Where are you going? The girls looked at the huge bags. Now we'll get everything ready and sit at the table. Her husband did not answer her question. And he and Carlos really went into the kitchen, closed the doors, told the wives to wait a little. They looked at each other and quietly went into the room. That's the way it always was. Betty and Selena were very good guys. They were always in charge. The wives just had to be there for them and love them. Well, that was it. An hour later, Harry came out of the kitchen. He and his friend had dragged a large table to the middle of the room and began carrying the dishes they had just prepared themselves onto it. Boys, did you really do all this yourselves? Betty marveled at it every time. Enough already, her husband kissed her on the cheek. They sat down at the table. Everything looked delicious. Carlos poured wine into glasses. We thought of you too. The young man smiled and pulled another bottle from under the table. You what? I'm nursing and Betty's pregnant, Selena told him immediately. It's non-alcoholic, hubby parried. Good, then let's have it. She set up 2 glasses. It was so family-friendly, the friends sat around, reminiscing about everything they had, how they met, what they talked about, and the rest. I feel sick. Betty covered her mouth with the palm of her hand. Hurry up, Harry took her hand. She didn't return to the table again. In the evening, the couple went home. I don't believe there is such a friendship, Betty said to her husband in the evening. How can it be? Because we have one. He looked surprised. Yes, I realized that, but still, she was silent. But it was true. In all the years of their friendship, neither the boys among themselves, nor the girls, nor their families had ever quarreled. There had been a few misunderstandings, but never a big fight. Are you going out? Selena called her friend. I can't, it's my stomach, she admitted. You need to go to the hospital, the girl worried. She was silent, counting what Betty's due date was. I'd already thought about it. But I want to wait for Caustic, she said, but she was in pain. When are you due? Selena finally asked. In 3 days, clutched Betty. She was already sitting down. It hurt so much. Urgently, call an ambulance, her friend advised. Okay, there was silence on the other end of the phone. BT, Selena shouted, but there was silence in response. The girl crouched down in the hallway. She could hear her name being called from the tube, but there was nothing she could do. She couldn't even inhale or exhale. The pain was so intense. A key was inserted into the keyhole. The girl turned around. Harry entered the apartment. He was in a good mood. He saw his wife on the floor. Everything immediately changed. He realized that he needed to go to the hospital. Now, love, 1 minute. He ran to the phone and dialed 911. Help! She held out her hand to him, but he didn't. He just walked over and lifted her into his arms. Everything was ready. All that was left was to wait for the paramedics. They arrived. Harry carried his wife to the car. They took her to the hospital. The young man wanted to go with them, but they wouldn't let him. They wouldn't let him in the hospital anyway. Ah, she was already in the labor room. There were doctors all around. "Come on, honey, soon you'll be a mom," the midwife commanded her. There was a baby crying in the room. Betty looked at the baby and cried too. She was now the mother of the most beautiful baby girl, Lucy. She took her tiny hand as she lay on her chest. "Congratulations," the doctor whispered in her ear. "Thank you." The girl lay there, somewhere in the distance, still feeling the pain that had just been so intense that it hurt to even remember. After that, she was transferred to the ward, and Harry was already standing outside the window, waiting for his daughter to be shown to him. "Look, it's your daddy." She brought the little bundle to the window. "And my husband just cried." He shouted words of gratitude and wiped his tears. That made 6 of us. Her friends and her husband greeted her after she was discharged. "Yes, we'll become relatives," laughed the girl's mother. "I don't mind," Carlos said. They went home and decided to organize a small table. Lucy was a quiet child. After she was fed, she fell asleep and let her parents spend a few hours with their friends. John was a little over a year old. The boy was curious about who was brought in and put in the crib. He stood looking at his future girlfriend. "Why, Lucy?" Selena asked. "I don't know," looked at her and realized that's what she was going to be called. Betty turned to her husband. "It's okay. It's a great name." He kissed her hands. After a brief sit-down, the friends left, leaving the young parents alone with the baby. Lucy was growing up, as on the first day she was very quiet, not crying much, only at night when it was feeding time. Now Selena and Betty were walking together in the park with their strollers. "We should get together," Selena suggested. Yes, her friend agreed with her. They were visiting with Betty and Harry. The friends were sitting on the couch watching John and Lucy discussing something on their own. The girl was still so young that she was babbling incomprehensible things, but the boys seemed to understand everything. Let them grow up together, and then they'll be together too. Carlos couldn't get enough of the children's play. "I don't mind," Selena said, just as she had at the maternity ward. "Neither do we," Harry turned to her. That's how the boys grew up, always close by. John went to daycare late. He was practically 3 years old. Betty had tried to find a place for Lucy too. Now the boy and the girl were in the same garden. Their mothers picked them up every day, and they walked home together. When it was time to go to school, Selena would not put John with her stream. They waited a year, and the kids walked to September 1 together. "We did it," cheered the moms as their kids walked to class with their teacher. Yes, they hugged. From that moment on, John and Lucy became inseparable. They sat at the same desk, went everywhere together. They were even teased as bride and groom. "How are you doing at school?" a mother would ask her daughter when she got home. "Not you, but you," the girl told her. She was in the 7th grade. "Good. How are you doing in school?" smiled the woman. She was pleased that they had once made the right choice. John was sticking up for Lucy now. He loved her and would never let her get hurt. "Everything is fine. Today I talked to Selena. He said that after school we'll get married right away," blushed the girl. "Where are you in a hurry ahead of the whole life?" Did not understand the mother, but did not have anything against it. They gathered with friends, the children together, they too. "You know what my daughter said to me today?" They were sitting around the table again. "We know. John pleased us too," laughed Selena. The husbands looked at each other. They too were supportive of the children. School was going great. The boy and girl didn't have to run anywhere. They often spent time at home. "Exams are coming up. Have you prepared?" Betty came into the room. "Of course," turned at the same time, guys. "Good, I believe in you." She walked out and they were alone again. At prom, everyone was together again. "Remember standing here with you when our boys went to 1st grade, whispered Selena to Betty. "Of course, it seems like yesterday to me." The woman brushed away a tear. "And now we're already seeing them off," sighed the other. "Nothing. I believe that everything will be fine." Their husbands joined them. That's how it was. When the official part was over and the graduates went to greet the dawn, John asked for silence on the bus. Everyone looked at him in surprise and fell silent. "Lucy," he knelt in the aisle by her seat, "will you marry me?" The classmates applauded. Some started whistling and hooting. "Of course I will." She hugged him and took the ring. John stood up. He hugged Lucy. Ever since he was a little boy, this boy knew that she would be his one and only and his favorite. They reached the place. Everything was calm and Jacoptic. The boys separated from the big company and spent time alone. Look, showed the girl the ring to her mom in the morning. Guys, why in silence? Why did not tell us anything? She took Lucy's hand and looked closer at the jewelry. I do not know, John so decided. Probably today we will gather, modestly answered the daughter. Okay, I'll go call Selena. The mother walked down the hallway and smiled. Everything was just as they wanted it to be. The families gathered together. They congratulated their children and rejoiced that they would soon be relatives. Well, shall we go? Lucy looked at her lover. It was only a few days before their wedding and they had a lot to do. Yes, nodded the boy. Everyone was busy with business. Lucy had taken her entrance exams only a week ago. John hadn't joined her. He was due to serve in the army. The wedding was in the last days of August. After that, Lucy started to prepare for her studies. John received a summons. It was not very happy news, but the guy did not show any sign. How am I here without you? She snuggled up to her husband in the evening. They were sitting at home in front of the TV. Lucy, you're at it again. He was nervous. What's the big deal if I'm worried? She looked up at her lover. You think I'm not worried? They talked about it every day, so the topic got a little tiresome. John, for some time before the draft, came to the same city where the girl studied. He didn't want to live away from his wife. Will you come with me, or by the weekend we'll be at your parents'? Asked her boyfriend, when before his departure was only a few days. Of course, I will go. She did not understand his question, because she loved him so much that she was ready to go to the army. The girl wrote a statement so that she would not be lost in her studies. The reason was serious, so no one would not interfere. Selena and Betty were crying. The fathers just kept silent. Friends gathered around the table, all raising their glasses and doing something. Dismissed early, Lucy and John went into the room. Will you wait? He looked at the girl. Why do you ask? Of course, yes, she kissed him. Tears rolled down from her eyelashes by themselves. Lucy couldn't help it. In the morning at the train station, she stood and stared blankly at the departing train. Don't worry, daughter. Time will pass quickly. We will support you. Her mother-in-law hugged her. Thank you. She turned away and walked away. Now the girl wanted only one thing, to go with her head into study, to do something, only if the hours and weeks would pass faster. Daughter, maybe you should move temporarily to a dormitory. Why spend money on rented accommodation? Her mother asked her. Yes, I also thought about it. There are girls there. Everything will not be so sad in the evenings. Lucy has already packed things for the move. Good, you're a good girl. The woman hugged her. John wrote often. In his letters he described where he was, what they were doing there. Lucy answered him with the same frequency. Why are you always sitting here like a mouse in a hole? The roommate came in after a walk. I'm studying. She pointed to her notes. I'm also studying, but you don't need to wave your hand at yourself. Come with us tomorrow. You'll have a good time, she suggested to her. I don't know what my husband will say. She looked at the sealed envelope that was to be sent tomorrow. I think he'll be all for it. Julia sat down on her bed. Okay, we'll see tomorrow, Lucy agreed. The next day in the evening, she and a few other girls went for a walk around town. They decided to sit for a while in the recreation area, which was in the very center. There was a fountain, of course. At this time of year it was not working, and a few benches, their girlfriends and occupied. Why did you get married so early? Julia asked the girl. I don't know, John wanted it that way, she answered. It is clear that nothing is clear, she laughed. Lucy heard the girl and looked around. She didn't know who knew her. Archie, she saw her classmate. How are you here? He came over, with a few other kids with him. I'm studying. Why are you here and not in the army? John's gone. She motioned for the boy to sit down. And I got in. I have a deferment. He looked at the girls. He remembered that he was not alone. I see. But my husband didn't want to, she said sadly. Oh yes, he's your husband. Archie remembered the proposal and the wedding. Yes, she noticed that the young men had approached the girls and were now getting acquainted. There's nothing to be bored of, the young man said cheerfully. Come with us. It'll be fun. It probably won't work tonight. Lucy turned to Julia, looking to her for support. Why not? The time is still childish. We'll have time for everything. The neighbor was already sitting next to the guy. Okay, the girl was not worried. Archie was a normal guy. He would not give her offense. That evening, they went to the young men's apartment. They rented it for everyone. The guys quickly organized the table. Funny dishes started to appear on it. Wine, melted cheese, bread, leftover sausage, buns, student kit. "I'm so glad I met you today," served Archie a glass of Lucy's red liquid. "I won't," she pushed the container away with her hand. "Come on, here's to introductions," he insisted. The girl looked at the others. Everyone was having fun. They were already drinking heavily. Well, she took the glass. Archie raised his own. They silently touched, and Lucy took a sip. She had tasted champagne once before, when they had been married, so she didn't like the tart liquid. The girl wanted to put the glass on the table, but the guy didn't let her do it. In the evening, when it was already very dark outside the window, Lucy and Archie sat in a small room on his bed. The girl's head was spinning. She was smiling. "Lucy, do you know how much I loved you at school?" he whispered in her ear, hugging her himself. "Archie, I'm married." She pulled his hands away. "I know, and I'm not saying anything, but my husband's not around." His breath tickled her neck. It was funny. I'm not like that," she said in a slurred voice. "Okay, I can wait." He kissed her cheek, then stood up, helped her up. "Maybe we'll go to the dorm. We have school tomorrow." She saw Julia making out with one of the guys. "Do you want me to walk you out?" Archie asked her. Yeah, she wasn't going to stay here. They reached the dormitory without adventure. Archie hugged Lucy on the steps. "I'll come back tomorrow. We'll go for a walk," he told her, his face so close it looked like he was going to kiss her. Lucy herself doesn't know what was wrong with her at that moment, but she wanted it. Archie touched her lips gently and let go. She walked into the building, went up to her room, lay in bed, and instantly fell asleep. In the morning, she walked to class and remembered what had happened yesterday. Why she acted like that, what she was missing. It was embarrassing. She had only met Julia at school, and she was cheerful. "Are you going to the guys today?" she asked her friend. No, the girl didn't want to. But no one considered her opinion. Archie came to pick her up in the evening. He was waiting for her on watch while she got ready. All day long, the girl knew she wasn't going anywhere in the evening. But as soon as she was told that a young man had come, she gladly began to get ready. "Hi," she walked out to him. "What took you so long? It's like a date," he laughed, and they walked outside. Lucy liked walking next to the strong and handsome Archie. Of course, she had no feelings for him, just friends. But the guy didn't understand that. He perceived her behavior as if she was flirting with him, and she'd agreed to go out. "Archie, why?" He brought her a huge bouquet of flowers. "I just like to make you feel good." He hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. In her letters to John, Lucy never said a word about being in a relationship. They also corresponded, confessed their love to each other. Lucy wrote that she was waiting for him. And the new friend kept coming, bringing gifts, flowers, inviting her on dates, which Lucy took for simple meetings. "Are you ready?" He came for her again. Yes, she came out to him. It was already warm outside, so it was possible to spend time somewhere in a summer cafe. "Lucy, I care about you." The young man took her hand. "Archie, why, you know everything." She lowered her eyes and took his hand away. "Perhaps your love with John is all far-fetched," he told her. "That's enough. I'm going home." She still wouldn't look him in the eye. "Okay, think about it." It turned out that they spent the summer together, and in September, they started to meet again in the city where they studied. "We should celebrate our new year of study," Juliet insisted. "I don't mind," Archie said immediately. They got together again at the guy's apartment. Wine, talking, laughing, dancing. Archie went to see Lucy off. As they walked past the park, he put his arm around her. "What are you doing?" She pulled his arm away. "Lucy, stop breaking down." He was very drunk. "Archie, stop it. I trust you as a friend. And you." She walked faster. "What about me?" The guy caught up with her and grabbed her arm. "Nothing." She was trying to get away. "Wait, why did you let me do all that then?" He shouted in her face. "What did I let you do?" She really didn't understand. Taking gifts, going on dates, what? It was all for nothing. He couldn't calm down. "Stop it. Let me go." She ripped my arm out and ran. No, I'm not letting you go that easily, he pushed her. Please, you've been so good, she cried. It's over, he pulled up her skirt. Bastard, she spat in his face. The guy stopped. The spit seemed to sober him up. He sat down on the pavement. At that moment, Lucy jumped to her feet and ran as fast as she could to the dormitory. Lucy, what happened? The janitor shouted to her. She saw that the girl's hair was disheveled and her sweater was torn, but she had already run away without answering her question. Archie didn't show up for a few days, probably because he was ashamed and Lucy didn't want to see him. The girl did not tell anyone anything, just stopped gathering company. Why weren't you with us yesterday? Julia asked her. Just did not want to, tried to look natural girl. Well, I see I'm not in the mood. I don't want to pester the neighbor. Archie showed up a week later. He called Lucy. She didn't want to go at first, but it was necessary to find out everything to the end. The girl came down to the watch. Let's go for a walk, her boyfriend called her. No, I'm not going anywhere with you. She remembered the last walk. Why, I love you, he shouted so that everyone paid attention to them. Enough, stop this concert. My husband is coming back any day now. She wanted to leave. You'll be sorry, he began to threaten. What can you do? Grinned the girl and went to her room. John wrote down the date he would be back. By this day, Lucy had arrived at her parents' house to meet her beloved husband with them. John got off the wagon all handsome. He walked up to his mother-in-law and wife. All together they went home to celebrate the meeting. The fathers were not at the train station. They prepared everything at home. When everyone was assembled, the questioning began. And the next day the guy and the girl went to the city. There they again rented an apartment. The guy wanted to enter at least a college, to have at least some education. How glad I am that we are together again, she hugged her lover. Thank you for waiting, he pressed her against him. For a week, everything was very good in the couple. On Monday, Lucy went to study. She had no premonitions. She sat out her classes. After that, she went to the store, bought groceries, and hurried home. Selena, I'm home, she shouted as she entered the apartment. She didn't hear a response. She walked into the room. The guy wasn't there and neither were his things. Lucy stood confused. She didn't understand what had happened. Please pick up the phone. She stood with the phone in her hands. Her husband was unavailable. She threw the phone on the bed. She herself buried herself in her pillow and started to cry. He couldn't go anywhere, only to his mom. The girl got out of bed, began to pack. Not a few hours later, she was in her hometown. Mom, did John come by? She asked from the doorstep. What are you doing here? A woman came out to her. Answer me? Lucy was waiting. No, what happened? Her mother was curious. I'll tell you later. I don't know yet. She went to her mother-in-law's. Aunt Selena, she knocked on the door. What do you want? John opened it. Please, love, explain what's going on. She wanted to hug him, but he pulled her arms away. Lucy, we're breaking up. He was very serious. What? Why? She sat down on the poof in the hallway, covered her face with her hands and cried. Here, this is not enough for you. He did not explain anything to her, threw an envelope in front of the girl. Lucy took the envelope, opened it. There was a letter and many pictures. The paper stated that she had been dating a certain Archie for a year. He gave her flowers, gifts, went out, kissed her. Attached to all this were photographs. One of her sitting on Vladimir's lap, another of him giving her flowers. Lucy threw it all on the floor. She cried even more, realized that the classmates so decided to get back at her. Selena, I'm sorry, but we had nothing. She approached her husband. Don't call me that. It was obvious he had no intention of communicating. I swear to you. Yes, we dated, we went out, but it never went any further than that. She was silent, remembering the night Archie had almost committed a terrible act. Why didn't you write to me about it? He's a friend of ours. I would have said you were in the same company, but you didn't. Why? He didn't look at her. I don't know. I didn't want to upset you. I don't need anyone else but you. She sat down next to him. No, I can't forgive that. The boy put his head down on his hands. But why? She was getting hysterical. It's a betrayal, he said quietly. John, I understood everything. I realized I only need you. She stood up, came up behind him and hugged him. Lucy, don't. He hasn't done anything. He's a scoundrel because I didn't go with him. He did that so you and I would break up. Lucy didn't want to tell him about that situation. I don't care which one of you, which one. He got up and went into the hallway. The pictures were still lying there. I'm not leaving until you forgive me, Lucy said. Well, you can settle down. You've been here a million times. You know what's where. The guy started to put on his shoes. And you. The girl cried again. And I need to think it over. He walked out and slammed the door. Not 15 minutes later, the door opened and Selena walked in. She saw the girl, the mess in the hallway, came up to her. What happened here? The mother-in-law asked. John left, slumped down in Lucy's chair. After that, they called Betty. She came over. Lucy told them everything. Yes, I know that she was in touch with this Archie. They even came to visit together, was surprised by the mother that her husband did not believe her daughter. Look what he sent him, showed the girl the pictures, chose the most provocative ones. The women read and looked at everything. So, now I'll call him. Selena got up and started dialing her son's number. What's he saying? Betty looked at her. Lucy, go home. He said he'll think about it. He'll come and talk to you. Selena spoke quietly and stroked her daughter-in-law's back. Do you promise? She raised her eyes to her. Yes, she kissed the top of her head. Lucy packed up and walked to the train station. She sat in the apartment again and suffered. How she wanted to find Archie now and tell him everything. But she knew how mean he was, so she didn't want to make things worse. The next day she was back at school. Every time she came home she hoped John had arrived, but he hadn't. Hi, he came after a month. John, she wanted to throw herself at him but didn't. She thought she would push him away. I came to talk to him. He came into the apartment. And that was it? Lucy felt like she was going to cry again. Let's see. He walked over and sat down on the couch. Ask me, I'll tell you everything. She sat down next to him. Tell me everything as it happened, her husband asked. And Lucy told for about an hour how it all began and how it ended. The only thing she missed was the story in the park. Why didn't you tell him you thought of him as a friend? The young man couldn't understand. How could I realize that he doesn't know it himself, she reflected. Yeah, you still have a lot of learning to do, he smirked. John, I swear to you that, between us, nothing happened. She moved closer to him. I believe you. He reached out and hugged her. Really? She snuggled in. I went out with him. He couldn't really say anything. And at the end, he admitted he was doing it out of spite, just like you said. John leaned over and started kissing his wife. Lucy was glad that she and her husband were doing well. Now every morning she prepared his breakfast, went to study, and in the evening they had Jacoptic meetings. John went to school, at the same time went to work in the police. Lucy rejoiced in her husband's success. Darling, guess what? She was holding a small box. I don't know. He took the gift from her hands. Open it. She stood there without breathing. The young man opened the lid, looked first inside and then at Lucy. Is this what I think it is? He didn't want to get excited ahead of time. Yes, she clapped her hands together. Inside the box was a 2-strike pregnancy test and a pacifier. We love it. He stood up and hugged her. Afterwards, the young people informed the future grandmothers about everything. The latter were, of course, delighted. John continued to work. Lucy had only a few months to finish her studies. After that, she was not going to get a job anywhere because she would start her maternity leave. Wait, her husband pulled away from her. His phone was ringing. Okay, she went into the kitchen. Honey, I'm being paged. He's leaning over her from behind. What? It's your day off, she got upset. Yeah, but some thugs robbed the cash register in one of the villages. They were spotted and now they're inside shooting back. He was fully dressed. Be careful, his wife kissed him. He walked out of the apartment. Lucy herself doesn't know why, but she crossed him. She had never done that before. Lucy, the phone rang in the night. Yes, she didn't understand anything when she woke up. You can come to the hospital. John is hurt, a male voice told her calmly. Not understanding, she sat up in bed. Come, a silence formed on the other end. She didn't realize what she was doing. Rushed to the hospital. What? She expected to be led to John now. Those scumbags were shooting buckshot. He's been hit. He's unconscious now. Muttered what was probably a co-worker. Can I see him? Lucy asked. I don't know. He looked around, looking for a doctor. The girl was thrashing around the corridor. She couldn't gather herself. When the doctor came to them, he explained that the wound was serious. The shot could go in different directions. Lucy started calling her and John's parents. By morning, everyone was gathered. Selena was crying. No one was bothering her. For 3 long days, women and men took turns being on duty at the hospital, and on the morning of the 4th day, John died without regaining consciousness. Daughter, her mother called her. No, she screamed into the phone. Hold on, her mother tried to find words of encouragement, but nothing worked. I'm coming. Lucy wanted to get out of her seat and run to them. No, you don't have to. We'll be right there. Betty stopped her. Everyone was saddened by this sad event. They just sat there in silence. Lucy was staring at one point on the wall. She couldn't even move. Daughter, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Your husband was a hero. Carlos sat down next to her. I know. Her voice was lifeless. The day of the funeral, Lucy went crazy. Nothing could stop her. She screamed like a wounded animal. And when no one was home, she even tried to kill herself. But her mother came back in time. Daughter, what are you doing? You have to live. You will have a child. She grabbed her and held her for so long until she stopped kicking. Mom, I can't do without him. He's my life, my love, the girl screamed. Everything will be fine. Remember that you'll have a little one soon. Then your brains will fall into place. That's how Harry caught them when he got back to the apartment. What? He didn't finish, he realized. The procession was very slow. So many people had gathered, colleagues, acquaintances, friends, relatives. They were really burying him like a hero. And only Lucy and Selena sat on the bench because they could not believe that their boy and husband were no longer in this world. I will always be with you. Lucy rushed to the grave. Her father managed to grab her in time. He was ready for it. When it was all over, she just fell on all those wreaths and flowers and sobbed in her voice. What can I do to help her? Betty looked at her husband. But at that moment, the girl was writhing in pain, and her mother noticed it and came running over. She's bleeding, the woman noticed. Hurry up and call an ambulance. The car arrived. The girl looked like a mad woman. The paramedics had to deal with her. When everyone arrived at the hospital, it was clear that nothing good to expect. And so it was. The doctor came out and told the family that the girl's baby was gone. Why did this happen to her, to our girl? Cried Beatty. The father was also somber. The girl is under sedation now, but in the evening you can pick her up, mumbled the doctor. Okay. Beatty looked at her friends. Unequivocally, we are taking her with us, said Harry. When her parents arrived in the evening, Lucy wasn't herself. She seemed to exist, but really everything inside felt like it had been scorched. When she arrived at her parents' house, all she did was lock herself in her room and sit there, tears flowing all by themselves. Daughter, you have to come to your senses, Selena told her. I understand that, but everything died inside me. Looked at her with colorless eyes. Daughter. Well, tell me, what do you see as a way out of this situation? The mother was ready to do anything to help her girl. I was thinking, maybe I should go somewhere. I will be distracted by my work. I will forget. Lucy turned away to the window. Of course, if it will make you feel better, then please, she went on all the girls' terms. Already the next day, Lucy began to pack. Her friend had long ago suggested that she go to work on a shift. And now she was finally right for it. Julia, is your offer still valid? Lucy called her. Yes, of course, we're always in need of hands, she said happily. Then meet me in a couple of days and I'll call you, Lucy decided. She sat at the table with her relatives. It was not as cheerful as it had always been. Selena supported her choice. She continued to socialize with Betty. Lucy slept very badly that night. She was plagued by nightmares. She dreamed of a girl who was reaching out to her and asking her not to leave. In the morning, the girl woke up in a cold sweat. Lucy left. She sat on the train, looking out the window and thought about nothing. At the station, she was met by Julia. The friends hugged. While driving to the place, the girl told everything that happened. She could only sympathize. Well, here we are. They got out near some building. Now Lucy had to live in the dormitory again. And again her roommate was Julia. Just like back at school, she smiled. Yes, Lucy shook her head. In the morning they went to work. the new girl had to learn everything. They had to work in the dining hall, washing dishes, floors, walls, and everything else. Sometimes she'd be asked to serve. It was understandable. Well, do you agree? Her neighbor looked at her. Yes, I have no choice. Lucy was ready for anything. The work was hard at first. When she got involved in the process, there was no time left at all. From the very morning until late in the evening, the girl was in the kitchen. She came home and just fell off her feet. But after she realized everything, she grew to her working time. Now she could have tea with the girls and go out in the evening. Let's go. There is a place where everyone gathers to spend leisure time. Julia called her when it had been a few weeks. Okay, Lucy wanted to go out. They packed up and set off on their adventure. Lucy knew that with Julia she was sure to find them. Oh, what beauties! They hadn't gotten anywhere yet and they had already been spotted. Two young men stopped to meet the girls. Hi, Julia said to them. What do you plan to do? The young men were curious. We haven't decided yet, the neighbor said honestly, and it was true. Come on, you can help brighten up our boring evening, they called the girls. Lucy said nothing, watching. They came to the local cafe, which was very small, but there were so many people here that it was strange how everyone got in. So here's to the meeting. The young men were fun. Let's get acquainted. The first thing Lucy said pleased everyone. That's right, the people in the room caught on. I'm Steve, and this is my friend Austin. Now spoke the one who before that was also more silent. Lucy sat sad. She didn't want anything. Then Steve called her outside. Do you want to go for a walk? He was already giving her his hand. Okay, they went. The town was small. They came to a house. Would you like to come in? The new acquaintance asked. Why not? Lucy didn't care. They went into the place where Steve had rented a place. It was obvious that he was not alone. Wine? He pulled a bottle out of the cupboard. Come on, the girl agreed to everything. When the bottle was emptied, Lucy sat looking at the young man. Come to me. He held out his arms to her. She stood up and walked over, dizzy. It felt good because all thoughts had gone somewhere. Steve sat her on his lap and started kissing her. The girl liked it. She gave in to his caresses. She was staying with him that night. Wake up. You have to go to work. Steve woke her up in the morning. Her head hurt. It felt like it was going to fall apart. Yes, thank you. Lucy was embarrassed because she found 3 other males in the room. I'll come back tonight, the young man promised, but Lucy never met him again. What, are you waiting for him? Asked Julia. How is it that in such a small town, we have not met for several weeks? Did not understand the girl. They can come for a one-time job, pull a heating main or an electrician, and go to the next object, explained the neighbor. I see. Lucy looked at her hands, which had become rough from the detergents. They continued to get out with her friend. Lucy had already gotten into the work. In the 6 months she had been working here, she had not given up wine and men. Lucy, you weren't like this. What happened to you? Julia asked her. My problems. She didn't want to justify herself to anyone. Her mother called every day. Lucy sent her money and lied that there was a lot of work and she couldn't come home. Betty believed her, so she didn't say anything. And the girl went on with her life. Julia, are you coming today or not? She called her friend. Wait, she had a headache, so she couldn't get out of bed. Okay, I'll go then, slammed the girl's door. It wasn't often that they had time to go out, so she didn't want to waste it. That evening she met Sasha. He was so handsome and also brutal, it seemed to Lucy. They took a long walk, talked, and then went to visit him. He lived alone. That was good. Lucy and Alexander spent the night together. In the morning, Lucy went to her place. She no longer expected to meet the man, but he came the next day. You? The girl was surprised then. Why such a surprise? He did not understand. Simply, she was ashamed to admit it. Are you coming? He waited for an answer. Yes, this insolence and something else like Lucy and this man. Once again, they were at Alexander's house. Everything was going well. He was doing a lot for the girl. Julia, he asked me to live with him, Lucy told her friend in the evening. And you? She tensed up. Why, I'll probably agree. The girl was glad. He is some kind of murky, did not believe Alexander neighbor. You just don't know him. That's the first impression. Lucy was sure of it. It's up to you to decide. Her friend pressed her lips together. She didn't like it. Okay, don't be offended. She hugged and kissed her neighbor, took her suitcase and left the room. From that moment, Alexander and Lucy formed a couple. They went everywhere together. Everything was fine. When the girl began to live together with Alexander, she began to notice that he was doing something illegal in addition to working here. One day, she decided to ask, but she was answered so rudely that she didn't even think about it anymore. "Why are your eyes red?" Julia noticed at work. "Don't mind her," Lucy turned away from her. "I see, she's hitting you," her friend guessed. No, she was telling the truth. It's just that she cried all night after a big scolding. "Okay, tell me if anything," continued the girl. With Sasha was difficult, but Lucy swallowed everything. After all, stability. She noticed that different people came to him. They'd talk about something, do something, but the girl didn't dare to ask about it anymore. "Lucy, aren't you going home at all?" Her mother asked her when she called. "Mommy, of course I'm going, but not now, a little later." She couldn't explain anything to the woman. "Who called you?" Alexander came up to her. "Mommy," she showed her phone. "I can also write Mom and Angelica will call me," he spoke in a stern voice. "Are you jealous?" She laughed. It was the first time he had ever hit her. Lucy stood, holding her cheek, and looked at Alexander. No one had ever touched her in her life until that moment. "If you misbehave, you'll get another," he promised her. Why? She didn't deserve to be treated like that. "You asked me how many men you've had in all the time you've lived here, and now all they say is that I picked up the poor guy. If I'd known before, I never would have done such a thing." He clenched his fists. "That was before you," she thought. She was acting roughly now. That was it. The conversation was over. The man just walked out of the apartment. Lucy wanted to leave, but she was afraid. There was no one to complain to either. When she got to work the next day, she decided to share with her friend. Can you imagine the look on her face when she told her everything? "Report it," Julia advised her. "I'm scared," Lucy admitted honestly. "Do you want me to report it?" she suggested. "Try, but if he finds out, we'll be in trouble," her friend told her. "Don't worry, we've been in more trouble than this," she promised her. Lucy returned home. She was really afraid of her roommate, but she had nothing to do but wait. A week passed. Alexander came home. "Did you snitch?" He came up to Lucy and grabbed her by the chest. "What are you talking about?" She made big eyes. "You know what?" He gathered some things, then put a chair in the middle of the room and sat the girl down. "What are you doing?" She was shaking, scared. "You'll find out now," he grinned. Alexander tied her to the chair. He doused everything with a smelly liquid for fear. Lucy did not even immediately realize that it was gasoline. He took one more look at her. He flicked a match, threw it on, and closed the doors. "Help!" She began to scream with all her might. At that moment came the realization that she was not living right, but no one heard the girl. The house was old and wooden. The logs were quickly seized by the fire. Someone called the fire department. Lucy was panting. She rocked harder on the chair. She fell down. It was easier here, but she realized she was losing consciousness. When she was at her wit's end, she felt someone lift her off the floor. "Lucy," she opened her eyes. Julia was sitting next to her. "Where is he?" The girl's first question was. "Don't worry, he's right where he needs to be," her friend reassured her. "Well and good." Lucy closed her eyes. "Imagine, you were right. He was doing all sorts of nonsense to destroy everything. Everything, and set it on fire so they wouldn't find it." Julia started whispering. "Yeah, and me for one," the girl cried. "All's well that ends well." The neighbor squeezed her hand. "What did the doctor say?" Lucy wanted to know. "Nothing happened to you, just smoke inhalation," the neighbor reassured her. "I want to go home so badly." The girl was still crying. "Everything will be all right," Julia nodded her head. Lucy was discharged. She immediately wrote a statement and went home. Now on the train, the girl sat. She understood everything and realized that she had been bad. How could she have let John down like that? What had happened to her? "Mom," she walked into the apartment. The prodigal daughter had finally returned. Her father came out to meet her. "Where's Mom?" She came up and hugged Dad. "She will come now, in the store," he replied. It was nice and cozy at home. Lucy went to her room. Everything was so nice here. "Lucy?" Mommy asked from the hallway. Mom ran to her girl. "Hello, dear," Hector. They went into the kitchen. The woman put the kettle on and then began to assemble the table. "What a fool I was," Lucy said, looking at her mother. "Don't talk bad. You were stressed. You felt bad," the woman reassured her. "Yes, everything can be," her daughter agreed with her. Lucy decided to exhale a little and then start her life over again. She looked for job vacancies. Not 2 weeks later, she was invited to work. Where was it this time? Betty was sitting there knitting something. "Where I went to school," her daughter confessed. "Alone?" The mother looked down. For now, she went over and hugged her favorite people. "Good," her mother agreed with her again. Lucy took out the diploma she had once received, packed her things and left. She had rented an apartment on the phone. Now all she had to do was pay for it. She got the job. It was easy for Lucy. Lucy had done the right thing. Now she was working in the local hospital department as a nurse, but she liked it. "Lucy, would you like to take another job?" her boss asked her. "I'll have to think about it." She was just about to go home. She walked down the street and realized that there was never any extra money. "Hello." Lucy entered the chief's office. "Greetings. Have you made your decision?" he asked her. "Yes, I have," she smiled at him. "Then write your application and you can start work." He handed her a blank sheet of paper. Lucy realized that it would be very hard, but the money would come. She wrote everything and left the office. In the evening, she was at home, sitting and thinking about what would happen next in her life. "Lucy, you will pull all the veins out of yourself," Elizabeth told her. They met in the hospital. Now they began to communicate closely. "What can I do?" "No one can help me," she said. "Do you even have a rest?" her friend asked her. "When?" Lucy smiled at her. "I see, let's go out." Elizabeth suggested it. It was rare, but the girl thought that after the day shift, in the evening you can relax. And indeed, with Elizabeth, they could go to a cafe or restaurant, spend a pleasant time there, relax. "Oh, it's so good that you're taking me out." Lucy leaned back in her chair. What else do girlfriends do? She didn't understand. In this place, they liked most of all pleasant music, good cuisine, friendly staff. "Girl, can I ask you to dance?" A man approached Lucy. Of course, she looked at her friend and gave her hand. "Anthony," he introduced himself as they walked to the center. Lucy, it had been a long time since she had danced with anyone or socialized with the opposite sex. "You're a good dancer," he said. "You too." She didn't know what to say. "It was nice, thank you," he said at the end as he walked her back to her seat. "Well, what's going on there? Did you get to know each other?" Elizabeth started asking at once. "Yes," Lucy's face blushed a little. "And what then?" She waited. "Nothing. Thank you for the dance. You heard yourself." The girl raised her glass. But she was wrong. When they were about to go home, Anthony came up to them. "Can I walk such beautiful ladies home?" He walked in the middle. "Of course," smiled Elizabeth. She lived with the man, now taking care of her friend. They walked. There was a casual conversation. Elizabeth saw her boyfriend ahead, said goodbye and ran to him. "Where do you live?" Anthony asked. "Why are you calling me? I look so old," she asked him. "Sorry." He was embarrassed. They walked on. "There's my house." They walked up to the driveway. "Can we exchange phone numbers?" He tried. "Yes," Lucy agreed. Anthony was a nice man. She walked home, feeling as if flowers were blooming on her soul. Anthony called the next day. Although Lucy was very busy, she took a moment to talk to him. He offered to meet, but she couldn't today. It was the night shift. "All I can suggest is that tonight you come here. I'll be out," she muttered. "Okay, that would be fine with me for starters." She could hear how pleased he was. Lucy didn't know if he would come or not, but she hoped he would. And he came, and not just for no reason, but with flowers. "God, it's been 1,000 years since anyone gave me flowers." She took the bouquet and smelled it. "It makes me feel good to do this," he smiled. From that day on, Anthony and Lucy started dating. When it was a day off, they would go to the park or just sit in the yard. The rest of the days, as it worked out. "Why do you live in a rented apartment? Move in with me," he suggested to her after 6 months of meetings. Would that be convenient? She was afraid. She'd already trusted him once. "What are you saying?" "Of course it would be convenient," he laughed. "I'll have to think about it." Lucy smiled. Of course, he understood that. Okay, I agree. Lucy thought to herself that she'd have found a real man. They started living together. Anthony was flying on wings. Why don't you have a rug in your house? Lucy asked him one day. I don't know, I hadn't thought about it. He looked at the floor, which was covered with linoleum. We should get some, she concluded. Suit yourself, he said, but he didn't offer to give money. Okay, Lucy isn't proud. She has enough. She'll do it all herself. In 6 months, she bought 2 carpets, bedding, a kitchen set, which was assembled by specially hired people. Could you do it yourself? The woman was surprised when she came home from work. You see, the hands do not grow from there. He waved his hands. After that, it was his turn to buy a bed, and then a large closet for clothes. Why are you doing this? Elizabeth asked her when Lucy was telling her. Why, I live there too. I wanted to be comfortable. Lucy did not understand the question. Oh, you live like this with men, you invest in them, and then they leave you, Elizabeth sighed. At that moment, Lucy remembered Alexander, shrugged. No, Anthony is not like that. Elizabeth, can you lend me a couple thousand? I saw such a nice shirt. I wanted to buy Anthony, she asked her friend. What, you also dress him? She was amazed. What's the big deal? Lucy was amazed again. Did he buy you anything besides that broom on the first date? No, Lucy thought. Well, you're ready to try. All in your Anthony. He only did what he did to bring you to his place. She marveled at the woman's naivety. Come on, he does so much for me, Lucy said. Oh, you'll be on his side no matter what you say. She wouldn't lend money to her friend. Fine, I'll borrow it somewhere else, she said. She liked to come home, cook for her lover, and then lie in a warm bed. We're having guests over today, Anthony said. Good, it's the day shift. She came over and kissed him. Are you gonna get everything ready? He looked expectant. When I'll be at work all day, let's order in. She hoped Anthony would agree. Okay, just do it yourself. I don't have time, he went out. Elizabeth, would you like to join us today? She asked when she got to the service. What's the occasion? She was curious. Nothing. Just Anthony invited some friends and I thought I'd invite you. She was scrubbing the floors and talking at the same time. Well, we'll be there tonight. My friend didn't mind. Lucy, as promised Anthony, ordered everything. She paid for the order. All that was left was to receive it at home. In the evening, she saw that many strangers had come. They were her husband's co-workers. As long as everyone was sitting at the table, talking and eating, everything was fine. But at some point, Lucy realized that the guests had had too much to drink. We should dance, Anthony said. Okay, one of the girls got up and turned up the volume. Won't the neighbors fight? Elizabeth asked Lucy. No, they are normal. The woman was sure of it. She went to the kitchen to get more snacks. Look, when she came back, her friend pointed with her eyes to a couple dancing. It was Anthony and that girl dancing. Fine, let them relax. Lucy waved them off. Yeah, if someone danced with Barry like that, I'd kill them. Elizabeth followed her friend. They sat down at the table, but Lucy couldn't help but stare at what her man was doing. They were wriggling so much, he touched the girl on every bulging spot she had. That's enough. She got up from the table and turned the sound down. What's the matter? The ones who were just bouncing on the carpet stopped. What are you doing here? She knew what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't help it. Okay, what are you yelling about? Anthony said, and they giggled with the girl. And you still believe him? Asked Elizabeth as she put her coat on in the hallway. Stop it, Lucy interrupted her. Okay, your life, but I suggest you take a closer look, her friend warned her. Lucy returned to the room and the couple stood again, already without music, moving slowly. She saw Anthony hugging her as if he wanted to take her immediately. She got disgusted, turned away and left. She cried in the kitchen. All the guests had left, only this girl was left. Elizabeth was in pain. She started washing dishes to distract herself. She heard the front door slam, thought it was the girl leaving. Anthony? She went into the room, but there was no one there. She'd done so much for this union and he'd do this to her. She cleaned up, made the bed, and went to bed. He came in the morning, smelling someone else's perfume in the bed. Did you like it? Lucy turned to him. What? He wasn't quite sober yet. The broad, Lucy explained. Are you jealous? He chuckled. No, the girl lied. Well, sleep then. He turned on his side and sniffled. How to live after that? She just didn't sleep until morning. "Hi," she said hello to everyone when she got to work. "Why do you look so bad?" Elizabeth whispered to her. Not sleeping well, Lucy didn't feel like sharing her thoughts with anyone. "I see, I've made a mess of things," her friend guessed. "What should I do?" The girl almost burst into tears in response. "In the first place, leave one position. All the money you cannot earn, and you are not like a man," advised Elizabeth. "I've already thought about it," she nodded. Today, she went and wrote a statement. If Anthony was making a decent income, she would quit. She was so fed up. As the years went by, Lucy continued to live with the same Anthony. They were satisfied with their mutual neighborliness. There was no love lost between them. He went out without even hiding it. "What's wrong with me?" she asked him one day. "What kind of questions?" The man looked at her surprised. "Just leave it." She didn't want to continue the conversation. If he didn't understand, she didn't have to. "Lucy, you need another man," Elizabeth said. "You look at me. Who will look at me?" self-critically answered her friend. "You want to talk about yourself. You are still beautiful. Just a long time ago did not take care of themselves." The girl encouraged her as she could. "I did everything for him, and he is so," cried Lucy. "Everything. Do not regret anything. You still have everything ahead of you." Elizabeth hugged her. They continued to work. Lucy wondered why she had given up the night shifts. She didn't want to go home, but there was nothing to do, and she again went to an empty apartment where everything was well done. She was cooking dinner, and the man did not want to return there. "Where have you been?" She felt his cold body at night under the blanket. "That's it. Go back to sleep." He didn't turn to her. Tears choked. That night she decided everything. She went to work in the morning, spent half a day there, took a day off. She came home, packed her things. She couldn't stop the tears. "At first I wanted to write a note, but in the end I decided not to." She stopped, circled the nest she herself had made with a glance, turned around and left. "Hello," she came to Elizabeth. They had agreed that her friend would stay here for a couple of days. "Come in quickly." She didn't want to keep her guest on the doorstep for long. They sat for a while, cooked dinner, ate, and went to bed. Lucy did not want to disturb the couple, so she stayed out of the room until nightfall. "Lucy, go to the 8th room. A man needs help there," the head nurse asked her. She put a basin of clean towels on the table. She entered the room. He was lying on the bed. She did not understand whether the man was asleep or unconscious. Quietly, she approached the bed, checked the IV. Everything was normal there. Then she began to remove absorbent cotton, syringes, and other things from the bedside table. "Drink," she heard, and she was scared. Now she took a mug that was standing there, dipped the cotton swab, and moistened his lips. He licked greedily. "More?" he asked. "Yep," she repeated her movements. He wrinkled his nose and opened his eyes. The whites were red. The young man looked at Lucy. She blushed for some reason. He reminded her of John. She came over and sat on the edge of the bed, though it was not customary. "If you could say so." He could hardly even speak, but he tried to smile. "Soon you'll get better and you'll be as good as new," Lucy reassured the young man. "Your words would be." He began to cough. The girl quickly approached. "You don't have to talk much." She lifted his head to make him stop. "Elizabeth, have you seen the patient from the 8th? She asked her friend in the corridor. "No, why?" She turned and looked at her in surprise. "I don't know, but when I saw him, something inside clicked," Lucy admitted. "That's a good sign," Elizabeth laughed. She decided to find out a little about who was in their facility. She asked this one, that one, the other one, the third one, and gathered a lot of information and gossip. Already in the evening, when they came home, Elizabeth called Lucy into the kitchen. They needed to talk. "What are you suddenly in the middle of the week?" The girl looked at the bottle of wine that stood on the table. "We need to talk about something," Elizabeth said cryptically. "Okay." Lucy took the glasses and poured ruby liquid into them. "Listen, your new acquaintance is not simple." The hostess cut the cheese. "I don't even know his name. Only later I realized that I could look it up in the medical records." She blushed again. "I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people say about him that he doesn't do the right things." Elizabeth lowered her voice. "What kind of things?" Lucy asked in a whisper, leaning over the table. Both laughed afterward. No one was home and they were vociferating. "I do not know," said her friend seriously, "but he is not in our hospital because he fell down the stairs." Why are you telling me all this? I'm not going to do anything. Lucy took a sip of wine. Yeah, I can see you sitting there, blushing and turning white. The girl smiled. Well, enough. Time will tell, you know. He reminded me something of my first husband. Immediately became sad eyes. Then I see Elizabeth guessed why everything is so. They sat until the husband of the friend came. Then they fed Sergei dinner, talked, and went to their rooms. In the morning, Lucy got up. Her mood was very good. For the first time in a long time, she sat in front of the mirror, made her hairstyle, made up her eyes. When she stepped out into the hallway, Elizabeth gasped. Lucy, you're so? She stopped talking. Like what? She smiled. I don't know, gentle, beautiful. They left the house and headed to their work. Lucy didn't wait to be asked or forced to go to room number 8. She went there herself. The first thing she did today was look at the medical history. She took it and looked at it like she was looking at what the patient had been prescribed. She read that his name was Jacob. She glanced out the window and said the name to herself again. What are you hanging out there? He's been looking at her for a few minutes now. I see you're feeling better, she said sarcastically. Give me a drink, he said sharply, and because his voice was hoarse, it seemed to be rude. Now, a little offended Lucy, she went to the nightstand and gave him a glass of water. Thanks, Sardi. He handed her back the empty glass. It's okay, she headed for the exit. Sit with me, the young man said in a different tone. What? She stopped at the door. Lucy heard everything, but she wished he would ask again. Stay with me, he didn't refuse her. Okay, she smiled, but when she turned to him, she was completely serious. Lucy walked over to the bed, pulled up a chair and sat down on it. Tell me about yourself. He lay on his back and looked up at the ceiling. My name is Lucy. I work here. She shrugged because she didn't know what to say next. Husband, kids? He turned his head slightly in her direction. Just like that, her cheeks began to blush again. Why, are there any secrets? He grinned and then grimaced. No, Lucy was confused. I'm just kidding. My name is Jacob, and I'm not really into anything, so I came to you for a while, he said. Nice to meet you. The girl was embarrassed. It was obvious that he was getting better because he was already joking and talking a lot. That's what the girl told the doctor when she left the room. She could not wait to meet Elizabeth and tell her everything that had happened, but they didn't meet until the evening when they went home. Look, I promised I'd stay with you for a couple days, but it just so happens that I wasn't even looking for anything. Lucy looked at her friend. You what? Do not even think about it. Live as long as you want. You do not embarrass us, sincerely said Elizabeth. And we made friends today, bragged Lucy to her. With whom? She didn't understand because she was quick to change the subject. Jacob, Lucy laughed. Jacob who? She still couldn't understand. What Jacob could Jacob be like? The sick one from 8th grade? Lucy laughed, offended because that was all she could think about. Oh, that's what you mean. Elizabeth laughed at the fact that she hadn't realized it for so long. Yes, he told me about himself. I did the same and all. We are already friends. She recalled how it was. Actually, you can't flirt with patients. Elizabeth wagged her finger. I know, and I don't flirt. The girls were in high spirits. At home, it was business as usual. Lucy couldn't wait to go to bed. She wanted it to be morning already, and she wanted to be by his side. She was going to work alone today. She told Elizabeth that she would get out early to go to the store. No one had come to see the young man in 2 days, so she decided to make him happy with something. Lucy bought some fruit and juice and headed for the hospital. Here I am, she slipped into the room. Hey, he was already half sitting up on the pillows. Look what I brought you. She started to put everything she bought on the nightstand. And why? He looked at it all. To make you happy. She didn't understand his mood today. Okay, he smiled at her, just like last time. After that, they ate oranges, talked and laughed. It's all you was the only thing he kept saying. After that, Lucy started giving Jacob massages. Several times each day, she went up to him for it. He would yell, but she ignored it. They were getting up, taking their first steps. In 6 months, Jacob was standing on his own feet. He looked at the girl with great love and gratitude. Would you be my wife? He asked her at breakfast. Do you honestly want that? She couldn't believe she was sitting here with him, as if all those years she'd spent in a bad relationship hadn't happened. What are you talking about? Of course you do. You are the kindest and most loyal girl. He got up from his seat and, leaning on his cane, walked over to her. Yes, I want to be your wife, she blushed. Then you will soon have the best wedding ever. He went to the seat. They were no longer in their 20s, but much more, but they were both young at heart. At the wedding were invited parents. Did not forget Lucy and Selena and her husband, who were happy for her. In addition, the former mother-in-law confirmed that Jacob is very similar to John. The friends had a nice celebration. The bride and groom were happy. How are you doing with him? Is he good? Elizabeth asked her. Very good. You have no idea how caring he is, Lucy said and looked at her husband. Didn't it seem to you that he only needed you when it was bad? Her friend began to doubt again. Look, we've been through so much together. I don't think he proposed for nothing. Lucy didn't believe it. I wish it were so, Elizabeth even spat. The guests left and the young people were alone. Jacob wasn't quite well enough to do business again, so he spent a lot of time at home. So far, so good. But as he got stronger, he started to disappear from home. At first, he tried to come home every day, but it was not very convenient for him, so after a while Lucy slept alone. The girl had nothing to do. She called her friend Elizabeth. Oh, that again, you have nothing to do. She was upset for Lucy. No, everything is fine. Now he will catch up with what he missed while he was sick, and everything will fall back into place, defended her husband's wife. We'll see. Elizabeth didn't believe anything anymore. And indeed, Jacob, not 3 months later, was right at home. Lucy wondered very much what was wrong. Why are you always at home? What about your work? She wanted to know everything about the man she loved. Don't ask unnecessary questions. If I'm at home, it's necessary, he told her rudely. Lucy did not interfere. She remembered what had happened when she had interfered in the affairs of her roommate. She was pleased that they were always together, of course. Jacob didn't spend every minute with her the way his wife would have liked. Why can't I go to work? She asked her husband, bored at home. No, you won't, he said imperiously. Can I at least go to a friend to visit? She could not sit in 4 walls. No, I need you. He took her hand and sat her on his lap. That made Lucy melt. She didn't need anything else. After a short time at home, Jacob started leaving again. He could be gone for a week or more. Lucy was jealous, worried. Come and visit and we'll talk, Elizabeth urged her. And if her husband came back, she didn't want to upset him. Oh, so sit with your husband, she said, as if offended. Jacob never showed up. A day later, Lucy got a call from the hospital, her heart sinking. She pulled herself together in a minute and drove to her lover's house. He was bleeding internally. What had happened? No one would explain. Beloved, come to your senses. She sat beside his bed after the operation, but all she got in response was silence. Again, a couple weeks in hospital and then bed rest at home. Lucy was there for him. Porridge, broth, medication. She could stay up nights because Jacob wasn't feeling well. Okay, I've got errands to run. It's been a month since he got out of that hospital bed. Lucy disappeared into Jacob's room for most of her working hours. After a week, the doctor gave him permission to get up, but he couldn't do it himself, so Lucy helped him. She walked with him first around the room, then in the hallway as well. Jacob said nice things, thanked her. A month passed very quickly, and during that time the young people became friends and they said goodbye very warmly. Will we meet again? The girl didn't want to let him go. Of course, he promised and got into the car that came after him. Lucy was sad. She looked after the departing car and almost cried. How are you? Elizabeth came up behind her. Everything is fine, blinked the girl, and a tear fell treacherously on her cheek. Come on, her friend took her hand and led her back into the building. Lucy continued to stay with Elizabeth. After she told her to live as long as she wanted, she hadn't even thought about it. Now she realized she had to look for an apartment. What are you doing? You've been living for so long. You don't need to move out, began to persuade her Elizabeth when her friend told her about it. I don't know, I still feel uncomfortable. Lucy was telling the truth. It's fine, trust me. I would have told you right away, the girl assured her. Lucy waited for him, but he didn't come. It was a shame. A month passed, the second, and Roma was still not there. Enough waiting, her girlfriend pitied her. You know, I try to talk myself out of it, But I can't, Lucy told her then. Another month later, a car pulled up to the hospital. I need Lucy, a young guy ran in. Now, Elizabeth met him, went to look for her friend. Hello. The girl came out into the lobby. She was very surprised that someone was looking for her. I need you. He showed her the car. The girl's heart beat faster. She had really waited for him. She turned to her friend, who looked surprised at everything that was happening. Let's go, Lucy said confidently. They climbed into the parlor. The guy there said Jacob wasn't feeling well and he'd sent him here for her. Excitement set in. Let's go, the girl said confidently. They drove off. Elizabeth stood at the window and saw everything. She was worried about her friend because she did not say anything, where she went, where to look for her in case of emergency. What happened to him? Lucy worried in the car. You'll see, it was obvious that the guy was focused on the road. They arrived somewhere outside of town, there to a house that was surrounded by a fence. The girl got out of the car, waiting for the doors to open so she could get in. She was led into the house, escorted into a room. Jacob was in bed again. He was asleep. Hello, she said loudly to make him wake up. Lucy. He opened his eyes and mumbled her name. What happened to you? Why didn't you come? She walked over to his bed. He moaned. Now she looked at the medication that was lying here. She decided to give him a painkiller. Don't, asked the doctor. He shook his head. Where is he? She rushed to the door, stepping out into the hallway. There she was shown to a room with a man in it. Are you the doctor? She turned to him. Yes, is something wrong? He got up from his chair. He's in pain, she pointed to the wall. Now he came out of his and went into the room where Jacob was lying. He saw that one of the medicines had been set aside. I wanted to give it to him, but he wouldn't let me. He sent it to you, Lucy admitted. Do you have a medical degree? The doctor turned to her. Yes, I'm a nurse, she nodded. Good, you wanted to do the right thing. You have to trust. The last words were addressed to Jacob. Thank you, Lucy said quietly. She stayed to live in the house. She called Elizabeth, told her to write a statement for her. After that, she alerted the management, and they went along with it. She sat by the bedside of a man she really liked. Lucy didn't know why she was willing to do anything for him. She gave him compresses, turned him over, gave him shots, IVs, whatever she had to do. Thank you. He took her hand and pulled her to him. Anyone would have done the same. She tried to say something. Because her heart was pounding, she was worried about being so close to him. No, he looked into her eyes and then pulled her close and kissed her. Lucy realized she loved this man. Let's try to get up. He'd been sitting up for a while now, but the bones were shattered. They'd been put back together piece by piece, so it wasn't a given that he'd be able to do anything. Probably couldn't, he doubted. But Lucy took his hands, one placed on her shoulders. The young man managed it. He stood by the bed for only a few seconds, then sat back down. There, she was breathing hard because it was a little hard. Be careful, his wife saw him off. She, as in other years, was alone in the house. There was a different kind of joy now. The husband had hired a housekeeper, whom Lucy liked to talk to. Naomi, still have time to do everything. Let's have lunch. She invited her assistant to the table. I can't do that, she made big eyes. What's the big deal? Lucy didn't understand. They sat down at the table, talked about a lot of things, mostly about life. Naomi told about her difficult fate. So Lucy opened up to this woman. Of course, it hadn't happened the first day they met. It had been a couple years since she'd been employed there. Jacob came home very rarely, and he and his wife practically stopped communicating. Lucy would rush to meet her lover when he showed up, but he'd say he was tired and wanted to go to bed. And in the morning, he'd disappear again. Jacob, I need to talk to you. Lucy told him seriously when their marriage was 8 years old. Can you do that? He even stopped. Don't you believe it? The woman was so fed up with everything. She was kind of married and kind of not. She wanted clarity. Tell me, he exhaled impatiently. What's going on with you and me? She asked him forehead to forehead. Nothing, he smirked. That smirk of his had attracted Lucy so much before, but now it pissed her off. Jacob, I'm your wife. I've been sitting here alone for years, and you won't let me go anywhere, she cried. And you remember who you were, where I got you out of, and all you can do is look after me. I've got another family, a kid. Yes, I'm married to you, but I'm fine there. You're just a backup. He said all this to her face and left the house. What? She stood there confused. Lucy went to her room, cried a lot. Naomi came over in the evening. She wanted to talk to someone, but the woman couldn't leave the room. Her heart was breaking into pieces. Strangely enough, Jacob came the next day. He went straight to Lucy's room. He sat down on a chair. What? She didn't understand. She'd had a sleepless night, so her head wasn't thinking straight. Who were you before? How did you try to organize your life? He waited. I don't understand, she thought to herself. How could he know all this? Don't talk to the servants, he guessed what she was thinking. Understandable, she looked down at the floor. It was embarrassing if Naomi also exaggerated everything. So, did you make free love? He leaned toward her. Jacob, she didn't want to talk about it. It was a long time ago and not true. Lucy wanted to forget it all like a bad dream. Jacob, what? He jumped to his feet. It was all long before she met you. She tried to speak calmly so as not to irritate the man. Yes, and being told that my wife is an easy woman, it feels good. He grabbed her arm. It hurts me. She started to get scared. Me too. He looked at her and breathed heavily. And what are you going to do now? She couldn't think of anything, only of that grip that clenched tighter and tighter. You don't need to know that. He shoved her so hard that she fell on the bed. Lucy cried, and he gave her a look as if he'd spat at her and walked out. In the evening, Lucy thought of nothing better than to get even. She was alone, pulled a bottle of hard liquor and pills from the bar. Everything was in front of her. Why would she want this life? Everything is wrong and everything is wrong. She's only ruining things for others, her parents, her friends, her men. She poured into a glass, poured in a handful of pills. When she drank the bitter medicine, she felt immediately dizzy. Lucy knew the effects would come quickly. As she was passing out, she saw the front door open. She remembered nothing else. Lucy, she heard, her consciousness was badly clouded. For the first few seconds, she didn't realize where she was or what had happened to her. But it all came. She squeezed her eyes shut, though she hadn't opened them yet. Why couldn't she even die properly? Thank God she woke up. Elizabeth was standing over her. Jacob was beside her. What's wrong with me? Lucy realized that she hadn't gone to the other world, but it couldn't be without a trace. It's okay. Her friend stroked her head. Nothing is good. Neither are the brains in your head. What? Afraid to take more so I can come and feel sorry. He spoke in a tone that made Elizabeth want to punch him in the face. I'm sorry I didn't. Lucy closed her eyes. The man left. The friends were left alone. Tell me the truth, Lucy cried. You have pinched some nerves in your face and also in your neck, but also in general. Your body is poisoned, said her friend. Lucy couldn't think about how she looked now. She was on her way to recovery. That's when she realized what she had done. When she wanted to get a glass of water, she couldn't do it. Her fingers wouldn't listen. She'd get out of bed, but after a while, she'd get tired. On top of that, my immune system was completely weakened. Let's go. Jacob entered the room when she was discharged home. She needs help, Elizabeth said. So help her, he said in a tone that demanded no objection. They left the hospital together, Elizabeth carrying her friend in a wheelchair. Afterward, Jacob put her in the car, and they drove off. At the house, Lucy saw young people, a guy and a girl. She wondered who it could be. They rent an apartment here, he explained. What about me? She wondered. It's okay. They'll be patient, and when they get ready to buy, we'll decide. It was agreed that the young people would try to live in the private sector, and if they liked it, they would buy the house. No one warned them that the landlady would be ill, but the owner assured them that she would not interfere with them. So they did. It was so cold in the room, but Lucy was too shy to ask anyone for anything. She pulled several blankets over herself. She went out to the kitchen, ate something. The young neighbors looked at her, tried to talk, but the woman didn't meet it. Lucy, can I help you? A girl came up to her when she was going to the kitchen again. You have your own life. I don't want to disturb you, she said. Would you like to go for a walk? You're always in the house? Maria asked her. If it's not too much trouble, help me get dressed. Lucy was ashamed, but she hadn't breathed fresh air in months. Of course, Maria did as she was asked. Lucy went out of the house, told the girl that she could handle it from there, and she promised to follow her in a few minutes. It was freezing. and it was cold to be outside for long. Lucy didn't want to be followed, so she presumptuously went into the back of the lot. There she sat for a while, and when she felt herself freezing, she got up and walked back. But the woman did not calculate her strength. She slipped and fell. It is not known how much time passed while Maria was looking for her. "What are you doing? You'll catch cold." Maria found her at last. "Thank you," cried Lucy. She lay in her room, tears running down her cheeks. Already during the night, Lucy had a fever. It was hard for her to breathe, but the woman didn't call anyone. She was ashamed that she had to ask strangers for help. "Lucy, how are you feeling?" Maria came into the room. "I'm fine," she wheezed. "What are you talking about? You have a fever." She went over and touched her head. An ambulance was called and the woman was rushed to the hospital. Bilateral pulmonary edema. They put her in the ward, and then there were several weeks of treatment. Lucy had a long time to recover from this condition. Maria and Elizabeth came to visit her. "Thank you," the woman cried. Her friend offered to call her mother, but Lucy was against it. It was not easy for her. "What are you saying? Anyone would do that." She recognized herself in Maria. When she felt better, she was allowed to go home. "Jacob, hello," Maria called him. "We agreed to buy the house from you." He arrived and saw his wife lying in bed. She had lost a lot of weight and her face was distorted. "I'll leave her here and file for divorce. Don't worry, she won't live longer than a year. But for that, I'll give you a discount." He looked at the future owners of the house. "How can you do that to a person?" Maria didn't understand. "You do not know how she acted." He scheduled a meeting for tomorrow to draw up the documents and hand over the money. "How are you?" A girl came into the room in the evening. "Why did you agree to leave me here?" Lucy asked, while she thought, if it weren't for this, where would she go? She didn't want to be a burden on her mother's shoulders. "I talked to my father. He said he would help you in your treatment." Maria sat down next to the bed. She smelled of kindness. "What are you saying? I don't need anyone's help." Lucy made a face that made Maria laugh. "You do not need to know that. You are still very young. Everything will get better. And people like your husband, you just need to throw aside." Maria saw without any stories what kind of man he is. Lucy was grateful to the girl. She lay back and smiled to herself. Living so many years with a man under the same roof, he offered her money to buy things in the stores. Why did she always refuse? She should have taken it and saved. Now at least she would have a financial cushion. "It's nothing." Maria looked after a woman. Her husband, Mickey, Lucy didn't see often, but when she needed his help, he was there for her. "You become like a mother to me." The girl hugged her sometimes. "You grew up without her?" The woman guessed. "Yes, she left us when I was not even 3 years old." It seemed that Maria was going to cry. "Gone somewhere or not at all?" Lucy asked cautiously. "Not at all." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm sorry." The woman squeezed her hand. "It's okay. I don't remember her at all." The girl wiped her tears and smiled again. Lucy decided that she would try, recover, and help Maria in any way she could. But time passed and it did not get better. The cough that used to choke her was much less now. "And we have guests." Maria came to a woman's room. "Who?" The woman tensed up. More than anything else in the world, she was afraid of the arrival of her mother, that when she saw, she would not listen to anyone, just take her home. And Lucy could not afford that. "Allow me to introduce Nani." A man entered the room. He had gray hair, but he didn't look old. Jacket, pants, boots, and most of all, Lucy noticed the perfume. She knew it wasn't cheap. "Hello," she said quietly, trying to cover her face. "You know, Lucy, as much as I've heard about you, it seems like I know you personally." He walked over and shook her hand. "Why this officiousness?" "Just Lucy." She felt the redness coming to her face. "Okay then, I'm Nanny." He looked at her. Rays of wrinkles diverged from his eyes, but that only adorned the man. They talked some more and then Maria invited them to the table. Lucy didn't want to go, but Nanny insisted. He helped her up. The woman threw on a robe. "I'm sorry I'm like this." Lucy imagined herself, her hair tousled with grain, herself in some kind of robe. "What are you talking about? You're sick. We'll sit at the table, and then we'll get you back to bed." He walked very quietly and supported her. Maria did her best. There was nothing on the table. Everyone sat down at the table and talked a lot, including the treatment. I can't agree to this. She looked at Nanny. At that moment, she felt that he was not looking at her as a weak and sick woman. Okay, I'll lend you the money after I can. You pay it back in installments. He tilted his head to the side, waiting for her answer. Are you sure it will help me? Her head was involuntarily tilted this way. I'm 200% sure. He raised his wine glass, said something else, and drank. I guess I'll be going. Lucy started to get up. No, we're going for a little walk now. Nanny stood up and gave the lady a hand. But me, she pointed to her robe again. That's okay. Here's the coat. He pulled out of the closet. We won't be long. They went outside, stood there for a while, both of them being silent. It was a pleasure to chat. He walked her to her room. We didn't even talk. She smiled her crooked smile. You know, sometimes even being quiet with someone is good. He took her hand, kissed it, and left. Lucy sat on the bed, looking at the closed door. That's why, when she had become so helpless and ugly, she had met a decent man. Not wanting to think about it, she picked up a book and started reading to ward off the bad thoughts. Maria saw Lucy off to the clinic, which her father had paid for. Elizabeth volunteered to accompany her, to be there for her if needed. You don't realize what an amazing man he is, Lucy told her on the road. You know, the fact that he gave money for treatment, yes, but you have to look at him. Again criticized another man, Lucy. You can always tell at first sight, squinted her friend. Yes, but this one doesn't seem to have any flaws. Elizabeth couldn't believe herself when she said that. They arrived at the clinic. There the women were placed in a room. Elizabeth had an extra place. The treatment began. Lucy underwent 3 surgeries in total. The doctors tried to relax her muscles. Whether it worked or not, it will be seen when the rehabilitation course is over. Elizabeth, help, Lucy asked. It was not easy for her. Her face was in bandages. She couldn't even drink properly. Now call right away. That's what I came here for. She jumped up from her seat. You know, I thought I'd call my mother, Lucy said one night. Don't you think it would be a shock to her? She's not a girl anymore. Elizabeth was worried about Betty. I don't know, but for some reason I feel like doing it now. Lucy wanted to cry, but the doctor said she should do it less often. Well, let's wait a couple more days, or in general, discharged and go straight to her, offered options Elizabeth. Soon, you'll find out. Just wait a bit. He drove on. The car stopped outside the restaurant. The man got out, opened the door on Lucy's side, held her out. Mickey and Maria were waiting for them on the porch. Daddy, the girl wanted to say something, but the man put his finger to his lips. Why are you all like this? Lucy looked at Mickey, who seemed as confused as she was. They walked to the lounge and sat down at a table. Lucy, when Maria started telling me about you, you reminded me of a woman. I couldn't believe it until I saw you. He put a photograph on the table. Lucy took it. There was a young woman who looked just like her. She was wearing the same blue dress at the time it was taken, and her hair was the same. I mean, you turned me into her. It was a little uncomfortable. No, it was just love at first word, not even a look. Tears appeared in Nanny's eyes again. I like you too. The woman told the truth. Then let's drink to that. They'd all raised their glasses, except Maria. What are you doing? Her father looked at her. I can't, she looked at her husband. What? I'm going to be a grandfather? Nanny was happy. Yes, she looked at Lucy, and you, a grandmother, if you agree. Of course I would agree. The atmosphere was very familial. They had a wonderful evening. After that, they got into their cars and drove home. When they stopped at one of the intersections, Lucy noticed a familiar silhouette in the car next to her. It was Jacob, and as soon as he felt someone looking at him, he turned around. The woman smiled. She could see the man's face start to turn white when he saw her in the nice car, next to the imposing man beside her. Will you marry me? Nanny asked her at that moment. Yes, she smiled. She had finally found the happiness she had been searching for all of her life. Okay, as always, your take. Smiling was also contraindicated for now. Lucy studied hard. She didn't want Nanny's money to go to waste. She did everything the doctor said. Finally, it was time to remove the bandages. Lucy looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe it. Yes, her head was slightly tilted to the side, but now only she noticed it, and most importantly, she could control it. But the distortion of facial expressions wasn't what it used to be. especially since the surgeon had said that as she practiced daily, it would go away completely. I can't believe it, she looked at her friend. And he did it. Everyone wanted only to cripple you, but he cured you. Elizabeth raised a finger up. It was necessary to stay here a little longer. Elizabeth was told that Lucy no longer needed an escort. She had to go home. What a pity that you and I are not back together, the friends hugged. Come, let's go to mine, reminded Lucy of her friend's promise. I will. She kissed her on the cheek and left. Lucy had time to think. After all the treatments and everything else, she would lie on the bed or sit by the window and look out there. There were only good thoughts in her head. She thought that even as she left Mickey and Maria, she would never forget them. When the girl gives birth, she could stay with her grandchildren. The door opened a little. Yes, Lucy wondered. No one had come to see her at this time already. She looked around, saw Nanny. Madama, he spread his arms to embrace the woman. I think you're flattering me a little. She stood up and walked towards him. No, I never lied to anyone, nor do I say flattering words. The man hugged Lucy, and then they sat down right there in the ward. I'm glad of that fact. She looked at him. He was handsome. Lucy began to imagine what he must have been like when he was younger. He must have had a lot of girls. Listen, you're being discharged in a couple of days. I want to pick you up myself and surprise you. He didn't say what. Okay. She didn't understand why she needed permission for that. Promise that I'll do everything the way I want, and if you don't like it, you'll fix it, he said, and then didn't look her in the eye. For what you've already done to me, I'll be grateful to you for the rest of my life. She pointed at her face. Deal. Then he took her hand as he always did, kissed it, and left the room. It was nice to be cared for by someone other than yourself. Lucy waited to be discharged, and it came, just like Nanny had said, 2 days later. Hey, he was alone. I thought Maria would be with you. The woman was surprised. Let's go. Remember, I promised you a surprise, the man reminded her. Yes, I'm very curious what it will be. She got into the car. First in line was the beauty parlor. Why? She turned to him. She realized she didn't look good, but she could do it herself, but later. Quietly, he put a finger to his lips. You promised. Lucy went. Nanny waited patiently in the car. Her hair was colored, styled. The woman's eyes looked immediately younger. After that, a little makeup. She walked to the car. She felt like she had been transformed into a queen. Beautiful. Nanny couldn't help but compliment her. Where to now? She turned to him. To the store, the man said confidently. You're so crazy. She shook her head. You'll understand everything later, he spoke in riddles. Several dresses were already ready to be tried on when Lucy went in there. She wore them all. They were all gorgeous. But she chose one, the blue one. She liked that color so much. As she walked to the car, Nanny almost cried. What's going on with you? She couldn't understand.